Good morning, Ms. Creighton and Senator Kyle. It's good to see you both. And again, thank you for your work on America's strategic posture, the report. I want to read briefly from the Commission's finding in the section that was titled Threat Picture through 2027 to 2035. The Commission concludes that the U.S. and allied conventional military advantages in Asia are decreasing. At the same time, the potential for two simultaneous theater conflicts is increasing. That's a stark statement, but it's one that bears repeating. So put slightly differently, as China's military capability is getting stronger, without significant change in investment, America's strategic advantages and ability to deter adversaries worldwide is weakening. Just last week, I visited U.S. military installations and commands out in the Indo-Pacific Command, including Guam, and it's clear that our infrastructure and industry lag this new strategic environment. But decline is a choice, and we have reached an inflection point. Decisions that we take now and we make now will determine whether the next century is one of American security and prosperity or if it's one of decline. So, Ms. Creighton and Senator Kyle, I'm going to ask the same question later on in the classified hearing, but what can you tell us in this setting? What were your most surprising findings on the threat environment, particularly with regard to China?
So in a nutshell, it's the rapidity with which China is growing all of its capabilities and how we as a nation have missed some of those signals about how fast that they really are growing and how extensive their growth is, and how capable some of their systems really are.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator, I agree. They're moving so fast. I think it's surprised us all. There's one other thing we should bear in mind, and that is that the things that they're producing are very technical, very high quality. They're ahead of us, for example, in some of the space issues and with regard to some of these very, very fast hypersonic type weapons. So it's not just the speed with which they've done this, but they're producing very challenging weapons.
Thank you both. You know, recently someone told me that we're in a pre-war environment, but still proceeding on a peacetime footing. Very similar, my colleagues have alluded to this, very similar to pre-World War II. What I think that means in part through was what the Commission concluded is a need to commit to a whole of government approach to be more efficient and effective. Would you both agree?
Absolutely. I think this is one of the things that really needs to be well thought out, is how we as a nation use all of our tools for deterrence. Because at the end of the day, this is what this is all about. It is deterrence. It is to prevent that war. And we have a lot of tools. We have a lot of capability. We just have to figure out a way to do it in an integrated fashion, and that was one of our recommendations. We spent a lot of time even thinking about how you incorporate sanctions into a strategy. It's the diplomatic effects into a strategy. So it is across the board. How do we think about being more effective as a whole of government?
Thank you,
Mr. Chairman, Senator, that's exactly the example I was going to give. Whole of government means, for example, that the Department of Treasury and the Department of Commerce have to help the Department of Defense in identifying places where we can stop sending American technology to China for its use in developing new technologies to support their military.
So, Senator Kyle, assuming we remain in a resource-constrained environment in the short term, we've had massive deficits leading to massive debt. So with that environment, this resource-constrained, what do you think would be the highest payoff investments we can make now to preserve options for ourselves and in the future?
Well, of course, this is something that I've personally been involved in for a long time, but I believe our commission believes so strongly in the recommendations that we've made here that they would probably support this answer. Given the fact that deterring nuclear war has to be the top priority for the United States government, and given the fact that deterring nuclear conflict starts with having a conventional and nuclear capability or posture sufficient to do that, it has to be the #1 priority for the government, including in terms of allocating resources. So therefore, in a time of constrained budgets, if you consider this to be the most important thing that we can do, you've got to act accordingly and allocate the resources necessary to accomplish the job.
Thank you both. Yes, if you allow.
Sorry, if you'd like, just a very specific, I think where we have to put the priority investment, at least in the early phases, is we have to work on the infrastructure across the board. And by that, I also mean people, because if we don't have our people, if we don't have a skilled workforce, if we don't have the infrastructure, the supply chain to produce what we need in the future, it's obvious we won't have what we need in the future.
Thank you both, Chairman.